Hey Mad Minders, thanks for tuning in to Mad Minds TV. This week's study was on ethics. 9 scholarly papers reviewed, and I gravitated toward a paper called Ethical Leadership Begets Ethical Leadership, Exploring Situational Moderators of the Trickle-Down Effect. The paper was published in 2020 and it was written by Damien O'Keefe, Glenn Howell, and Aaron Squires. The paper surveys 453 people in a very unique organization to find out what their definition of ethics and ethical leadership is. To make sure we're on the same page, I have to provide a definition of ethical leadership based on this paper. And that definition is the normal, appropriate conduct through action and interpersonal relationships, as well as the promotion of the same behavior in others and around that organization. The paper starts off by highlighting the link between ethical leadership, or a lack thereof, and the behavior of subordinates or followers. And it pushes a link between that as well as employee satisfaction, employee loyalty, whistleblowing, and employee conduct, which I view as inside the organization and outside the organization. After that, the paper highlights how ethical leadership is rooted in something called social learning theory. And social learning theory is learning new behaviors by watching others. Leaders can be viewed as role models, and people tend to mimic the behavior of their role models, especially in environments and cultures that they feel safe and comfortable in. After that, the paper rolls into organizational climate. An organizational climate, a definition for it, is the behavior of an organization as a whole or its mood. And this is when perception becomes big. My perception of a healthy organizational climate may not match your perception of a healthy organizational climate. The paper highlights 5 types of organizational climates. And the first is caring. That means taking care of others and co-workers. The second is law of code. That means being in compliance with laws and regulations set outside of the organization. The third is rules. That means staying in compliance with rules inside the organization. The fourth is instrumental, and that is basically self-interest, making sure you're taken care of. And the fifth is called independence, and that's focusing on your personal ethics. After that, the paper touches on what's called organizational justice, and that's the perception of how fair an organization is. And it talks about 3 factors for organizational justice. And the first is disruptive justice. That touches on money and profits. The second is procedural justice, and that touches on the fairness of the decision-making within the organization. And the third is instrumental justice. Actually, it's called interactional justice. So the third is called interactional justice, and that's broken down into 2 parts. But to simplify that, that's basically how are other people treated within an organization. Those factors, as well as the climate, can determine not only the perception of ethical leaders, but how leaders behave ethically within an organization. Now, if you're interested in ethical leadership or ethics in general, I definitely recommend reading this paper. It provided a lot of great data, and it provided some links between behaviors which are very important. Now, when it comes to my experience with ethical leadership, there's 2 directions I can go here. I can go wartime ethical leadership, or I can go peacetime ethical leadership. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to, of course, focus on peacetime ethical leadership and then throw in some nuggets. What I've seen when it comes to ethical leadership is everybody leads ethically, or let me walk that back. Most people lead ethically until they choose not to. When deadlines get tight, careers are on the line, and there isn't enough resources, and then social issues arise, ethics gets thrown out the window and it becomes about what's called law of code. Am I breaking the law? Because what I perceive as ethical, somebody may not perceive as ethical. So what it boils down to, in my personal experience, is a person breaking the law? And if the answer is no, I've typically seen they move forward, and that's kind of how things go, because it's all about perception. However, I do agree with the ethical leadership trickle-down effect. I've lived it and I've seen it. Subordinates and followers typically mimic the behavior of the people that they're following. People rarely do things, whether it deals with ethics, morals, integrity, or even legality, if they don't believe they can get away with it. And an organization environment and culture has a direct reflection on the behavior of people, whether they think they can get away with things or not. Legality will never trump culture. People would come and talk to me about some of these issues, and I would always tell them, before you go to HR, before you go talk to internal legal counsel, before you go talk to the inspector general, seek outside legal counsel if needed, because the moment you bring these issues up, retaliation is real. I've seen a lot of retaliation. And if it looks like you're only seeking legal counsel or creating a lawsuit after the actions happen, it just looks like you're bitter and angry versus actually telling the truth on something that may have been illegal, immoral, or even unlawful. Now that I've shared, I'm really curious if you think ethics matters, or is it all about the law? What do you see in your work environments in terms of ethics and ethical leadership? Does ethical leadership matter? What type of climates do you have, and what type of justices do you see? Please do me a favor and comment below, because this is a very serious subject based off a lot of the things we're seeing externally, not just in the US, but around the globe. And as always, with videos like this, I have to say, this is just me thinking out loud. Do not live your life based off these words. They're not guidance. It's not advice. Whatever you do, stay mad, be well. Thanks again, and I'll see you next week. Bye-bye.